My name is Dr. William Sugut, Director in charge of Education Reforms and Implementation of Junior Secondary Education Programs in Kenya. I've come to attend a conference in Lusaka. I'm here to attend the conference, the Makita Partnership for Education here in Lusaka, following the invitation that was given to the Ministry of Education in Kenya. And I was asked by my bosses to represent them in this conference. Yes. Well, girl education is very, very critical. And even before going to that, it's important for us to underscore the fact that education is meant to help offer solutions in society. And in this case, we are handling children who are in school, and therefore the education that they are given must be able to help them address issues in life. Over the years, then we've seen issues of access, issues of retention, issues of completion, and therefore it's important when we look at data, we realize that we are offering education to boys and girls. But when we compare the two, we do realize that girls have more challenges. And that's why emphasis should be placed on the education of children, and more particularly of the girl, because one, these girls go through challenges. Look at the menstrual hygiene, which still is part of their time in school every month. Look at challenges of early marriage. Look at some communities where they still practice female genital mutilation. That is still something that affects the girls. And when you have all these, it therefore means that we must be able to think about the girl child in a more special way, to ensure that we therefore ensure that they are in school, they are benefiting out of the learning, and if there are things that keep them out of school, we need to work against those issues so that we can have them in school, so that they can be able to get lifelong education that will help them navigate through life. When we talk about gender responsive education, in the first place, we must understand that gender is not just about girls. Gender is about boys, about girls. But when we look at our education system, what happens when children are in school and for some reason they drop out? And what are these things that cause them to drop out? For example, if we pick on pregnancies among the youth and the girls in this case, when a girl is expectant, the girl at some level leaves school and therefore loses on time. In that case, then we must be able to think about legislation, we must be able to think about policy directions, we must be able to think about regulations that will ensure that this girl who has left school is able to come back. The example of the re-entry policy in Kenya suffices to illustrate this, that when girls leave school because of pregnancy, for example, or any other reason, we are able to get them back to school after they have been through with all what they have been going through with regard to pregnancy. And we even go ahead to ensure that because of purposes of stigma, we do not necessarily need to force them into the schools where they were previously. It is possible to organize to avoid that stigma and put them in schools of the same level and are different from where they were. So that is very, very, very critical. And therefore, what I think in Africa is very critical is, as we think about these policies that help children to be in school, help them to come back to school if they have dropped for some reason, we must be able to think of legislation that creates a conducive environment for the children in school, and that allows stakeholders, therefore, to be able to take the children back to school. Because the most important thing is, again, we should work round the clock to ensure that we counter any challenges that come in to remove our children from school, because they need to be in school and they need to benefit fully from the programs that have been set by various governments. Well, you know, a number of times we want to talk about the way the other countries have done very well and that we have not done very well in Africa. But the critical question then that we should ask ourselves is, in Africa, what are our challenges? If our children are not going to school, because we do emphasize on 100% transition, when our children possibly go through grade 1 up to grade, various countries go up to grade 6, others go to grade 7, others to grade 8. Now in Kenya, we are going to grade 6 through the competency-based curriculum. As they transit to secondary and they transit to maybe senior secondary for those who offer that, if our children are not getting to school and in terms of data is not getting to 100%, then we need to ask ourselves why. And when we ask ourselves the question, why are they not in school, definitely we will be able to line up issues that keeps them out of school. Is it child labor? Is it early pregnancies? Is it poverty? Is it the cost of education? Is it peer pressure? What is it that keeps children out of school? When we do that, then we should therefore be able to examine and say, yes, these are the true things that affect our African countries and that affect our children in school. And therefore, we must be able to think of solutions alongside those factors. If, for example, it is the cost of education, then there is need for our various governments to invest in education. I am aware that a number of countries are now offering free education. But the question then is, apart from the payment of fee, are there any other costs that keep children out of school? For example, uniforms. How do we look at the uniform question? How do we look at, apart from government paying for maybe free secondary education, free primary education, there's the issue of the uniform. How about the meals? Is it possible also that children are out of school because of meals? That is a very critical factor. And this is coupled with poverty. So that if children come from a disadvantaged family, they are not able to fend for themselves, they are not able to give a meal, it will be very difficult for the same children to get to school. And that is why in instances where institutions and governments have introduced food in schools, children are able to get to school, so that improves access to education. But now, when we think about that, there is need for us to be able to think about solutions that are sustainable. How do we make this meal program, for instance, sustainable? That children are able to go to school from Monday maybe to Friday, but at the same time they are able to get that meal throughout the year. They are able to get it in year 1 through year 6. Because we must therefore be able to think about a sustainable solution to each of the challenges that we are talking about. And it is only possible to do that when we really understand the problem on the ground. Is it possible to empower institutions that possibly are endowed with land to be able to grow their own food so that they are able to supply or to provide food to the children? Is it because for how long will the institution depend on donation? That may not be very, very sustainable. If it is, for example, menstrual hygiene that keeps children out of school, we do, like in Kenya, we supply the sanitary towels. When that is done, the question then is, how do we sustain this so that we are aware that we are able to take care of this need for the entire year, the second year, the third year, until the children are able to complete their education. And that is what is very, very, very critical. It's important, therefore, to look at what is it that affects us. Because I believe the countries that have done well must have been able to look at their own issues within. Let us look at what is happening in Zambia. Let us see what is happening in Uganda. Let us see what is happening in Kenya. So that we grow solutions that are from home, that people can be able to sustain and be able to support consistently. I also want to indicate that education is very, very important, and therefore I want to appeal to all stakeholders, be it politicians, be it educationists, be it parents, and even the children themselves, that the way we can change our continent, the way we can address issues in society is by getting education that will be equivalent to enabling us to offer those solutions. There is no choir that sings better than the choir master.